Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Raus IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Raus IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from UPSC Civil Services Examination perspective. Now today let us discuss and analyze some of the important news appearing in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 21st October 2021. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion. Now for our weekly DNS mains answer writing practice, the question for today's week is: what domestic and international factors have caused the price rise of edible oils in India, and what is the way forward? This answer needs to be written in 150 words and this question carries 10 marks. Now this question has been taken from the Indian Express explained video which was released for the 4th week of May 2021, and this topic, why edible oils are costlier and the way forward, was discussed elaborately by Mangal sir. So in order to answer this question, what you can also do is to go through this particular video so as to understand the important aspects of edible oils and the reasons why they are becoming costlier. So after going through the video, you can write your answer and upload on the e-learn platform of Raus IAS. Now in continuation of the series of taking up questions from Prelims 2021 and also to understand that how the sources of Raus IAS helped you to tackle these questions, let's take up this question asked as question number 73 from set A. The question was: the term ACE2 is talked about in the context of. Options were A. Genes introduced in the genetically modified plants, B. Development of India's own satellite navigation system, C. Radio collars for wildlife tracking, and D. Spread of viral diseases. Now this topic of ACE2 protein was discussed in the DNS of 12th April 2020 as we discussed about this topic with respect to coronavirus. So this news highlights that coronavirus are a group of enveloped positive stranded RNA viruses that consist of 4 structural proteins, and as the first part we mentioned about spike glycoprotein containing ACE2 receptor on the epithelial cells in lower respiratory tract. So if you had gone through this particular DNS dated 12th April 2020, then you could have easily solved this question asked on ACE2 protein. And in general, with respect to COVID virus, this term was very much in news. So here the correct answer becomes D, that is spread of viral disease. Now this question was also asked in the current affairs prelims test series in March 2020 in Raus IAS. So the question was, it said that which of the following statements are correct regarding the ACE2 receptors. Options were: first, ACE2 is a cellular receptor which serves as the entry point into the human cells. Second, the spike protein of the novel coronavirus binds to the ACE2 cell receptor with lesser affinity than in the case of SARS. Third, diabetes and hypertension treatment with ACE2 stimulating drugs increase the risk of developing severe and fatal COVID-19. Now in this question, the second option was incorrect. So the question was: select the correct answer using the code given below. So here the correct answer becomes B, that is 1 and 3 only, as both statement 1 and statement 3 were correct. So had you attempted this question on ACE2 receptors, you would have a much deeper understanding of ACE2 receptors, which we also discussed in the DNS of 12th April 2020, especially with respect to spike glycoprotein. So here the correct answer with respect to this question becomes D, that is spread of viral diseases. Now the first news appears as a lead article on page number 6. It says: the carbon markets conundrum at COP26. Success in Glasgow hinges to a great extent on the conclusion of one of the most technical and highly contentious issue. And this technical and highly contentious issue is with respect to Article 6 of Paris Agreement. So Article 6 of Paris Agreement introduces provisions for using international carbon markets to facilitate fulfillment of nationally determined contribution, that is NDCs. And this is done particularly by Article 6.4. Now this article says that the success of COP26 at Glasgow depends to a great extent whether the developed and developing countries agrees to the standard operating procedures with respect to application of Article 6.4, which talks about market mechanism, and Article 6.2, which talks about voluntary cooperation. Now, Article 6.4 under the Paris Agreement allows for such market mechanisms to be traded with respect to such projects which lies outside the nationally determined contribution. Now, this is favored by most developing countries. However, the developed countries mostly favor for Article 6.2, which provides for voluntary cooperation. So, this article highlights about the constraints with respect to the understanding of developed countries and also the demands of carbon space by the developing countries under the Paris Agreement. And further, this article also says that in order to achieve a smooth transition, it is necessary to sort out the differences between the developed and developing countries with respect to achieving their emission targets. So this article becomes important both from our prelims perspective and also from the perspective of mains examination. In the prelims, question can be asked under the aspect of general issues on environmental ecology and climate change, and in the mains, question can be asked under GS paper 3, particularly with respect to the aspect of environmental pollution and degradation and also environmental impact assessment. Now, we have already discussed about Article 6.2 and Article 6.4, as Article 6.4 provides for certain market mechanism which also lies beyond the nationally determined contribution. So this article says that success at COP26 at Glasgow will depend on sorting out the problems on carbon trading and also its use for nationally determined contribution. So Article 6 of the Paris Agreement introduces provisions for using international carbon market to facilitate fulfillment of NDCs. Further, it also aims to promote integrated, holistic and balanced approach that will assist the governments of the world in implementing their nationally determined contribution targets. So it is based on these understandings, this article highlights three critical issues, particularly with respect to Article 6 of Paris Agreement. Let's understand these three critical issues pertaining to Article 6.4 and Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. Now, the first critical issue highlighted in the article is regarding use of Clean Development Mechanism transition. Now, the provision for Clean Development Mechanism was provided under the Kyoto Protocol, which allowed a country with an emission reduction or emission limitation commitment under the Kyoto Protocol. And this was done in order to implement an emission reduction project in developing countries. Now, these projects earned saleable certified emission reduction credits, that is CERs, which is equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide, which can be counted towards meeting the Kyoto Protocol targets. So it is in this regard this article highlights that there needs to be a smooth process and also an equitable process with respect to transition from Clean Development Mechanism to the present Paris Agreement, especially with respect to Article 6. Now, the problem with respect to Clean Development Mechanism and a transition to Paris Agreement is that there are some countries, mostly the developed countries, who doubt over the validity of these credits earned under the Clean Development Mechanism, especially with respect to certified emission reduction credits. So this newspaper highlights that Article 6 of the Paris Agreement should allow for smooth transition of projects and also credits earned. Now, the problem here is that some countries doubt the validity of these credits earned under the Kyoto Protocol. So, there is an acceptance of transition of projects from the Kyoto Protocol to Paris Agreement, but there is a lack of similar acceptance for these credits earned under Kyoto mechanism. So, the newspaper says that there must be a smooth transition from Kyoto to the Paris Agreement, especially with respect to acceptance of certified emission reduction credits, as this will not only ensure validity of such projects and also the credits earned by different countries, but it will also inspire confidence among private investors in the UNFCCC. So, smooth transition from Kyoto Protocol to Paris Agreement can be said to be one of the key area which needs to be discussed and sorted out both by developed and developing countries. Now, based on our discussion so far, let's take up this question asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2016. The question read, consider the following pairs: terms sometimes seen in the news and their origin. First, Annex 1 countries and Cartagena Protocol. No, this pairing was incorrect as Annex 1 countries is with respect to UNFCCC. Second, certified emissions reduction. Now we have just studied about certified emission reduction, that is with respect to clean development mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol. So here Nagoya Protocol becomes incorrect. Third, clean development mechanism, Kyoto Protocol. Yes, this is correct as we have just seen. So here the question was which of the pairs given above are correct. So here the correct answer becomes C, that is 3 only. Now while going through clean development mechanism, we came across Annex B party. Now these Annex B party according to Kyoto Protocol were a set of 37 industrialized countries and economies in transition on which the Kyoto Protocol had set a binding emission target. So these were Annex B countries with respect to Kyoto Protocol. Now let's move to the second critical issue with respect to accounting rules. And this accounting rules is regarding the market mechanism of emission target which falls outside NDC. But this provision has already been provided under Article 6.4 of Paris Agreement. So Article 6.4 of Paris Agreement incentivizes private sector and public entities to undertake mitigation activities to reduce global gas emissions. And under this mechanism, a country can purchase emission reductions from public or private entities of the host country in order to meet its NDC targets. Further, Article 6.4 also provides for a market mechanism by selling emission reductions which lies outside NDCs. Now here lies the problem with respect to developed countries, and this is what the developed countries has been opposing so far. Now the first problem here is that with respect to transfer of these emission reduction from host countries does not automatically get adjusted to NDCs. And because of this, the developing countries has to go for market mechanism. Further, developed countries are against this mechanism as Article 6.4 allows the developing countries significant gain from market mechanism under Article 6.4 by selling emission reductions which lies outside their NDCs. So obviously the developed countries are against the mechanism provided under Article 6.4, and accordingly they want to resort to Article 6.2 which provides for voluntary cooperation to cooperative approaches. And also the developed countries wants to limit the use of Article 6.4 which allows for market mechanism for carbon trading which lies outside NDCs. So these are some of the contentious issues on which the developed countries are against use of Article 6.4. And the third critical issue highlighted in this newspaper also arises from the same problem, and it talks about share of proceeds, especially regarding adaptation fund. Now this article says that the adaptation fund remains severely underfunded. And in this regard, the developing countries wants a standard operating procedure which should be equally applied to Article 6.2 and also Article 6.4. That is, it should equally apply to market mechanism for such carbon trading which lies outside NDC, and it should also apply equally to the voluntary cooperation to cooperative approaches by developed countries. Now another problem with respect to developed countries is that they want to restrict the application of adaptation fund to market mechanism, especially under Article 6.4, and they do not want the provision of adaptation fund to be applied to Article 6.2 which talks for voluntary cooperation. So basically they want to restrict the use of adaptation fund mainly to market mechanism, as it will reduce the space for adaptation fund for the developing countries. So these are some of the critical issues which has been highlighted in this article, especially regarding the aspect of carbon trading through market mechanism, especially which lies outside NDCs, and also the restricted approach which the developed countries wants to take pertaining to Article 6, especially with respect to use of market mechanism and limited use of adaptation fund. Now this article also becomes important from Indian perspective, as India can also significantly gain from the market mechanism provided under Article 6.4 by selling emission reductions which lie outside its nationally determined contribution. So in this regard, this article becomes important from the perspective of environment, and questions can be asked in your prelims or mains examination. So with this understanding of this article, let's move to our next article for discussion. Now the next article to be taken up also appears on page number 6. Now this article says the outlines of a national security policy based on the need of 21st century. So it says that once cyber technology becomes a key variable in the defense policies of a nation, land size or GDP size are irrelevant. Now, this article suggests that increasing use of cyber warfare through the use of technology has made the aspects of geography, population, and even GDP of large nations irrelevant. Now, this is because even smaller countries such as North Korea or Sri Lanka can have technology at their disposal, and this makes smaller nations equally threatening. So, this article suggests that increasing use of technology such as artificial intelligence, 5G, or even nanotechnology, including innovations in cyber technology and software developments, has changed the concept of war from mobilization of force and weapons to use of mere remote controlled weapons through cyber technology. So cyber warfare is now fought through remote controlled mechanism, and there is no need of mobilization of resources or even ammunitions. So it is in this regard, increasing use of cyber warfare has made even smaller nations more threatening, and the aspects of geography, that is size of a nation, population, and even GDP have been made irrelevant because of increasing use of cyber warfare. So based on this understanding, this article highlights for 4 dimensions for a new national security policy for India in the 21st century. And these 4 dimensions with respect to a new national security policy in the 21st century for India should be based on objectives, priorities, strategy, and resource mobilization. Now, with respect to national security policy, you must know that India already has a national cyber security policy of 2013 issued by Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. Now, according to this policy, cyberspace is a complex environment consisting of interactions between people, software, and services supported by worldwide distribution of information and communication technology, devices, and networks. And this cyber warfare is fought in this cyberspace. Now, this is done either by nation or state, such as China or Russia, or by non-state actors. Now, cyber warfare has the capability of causing infrastructural damage pertaining to leak of data, which may impact or hamper national security, commercialization of personal details with respect to health details or financial details, or leak of such personal details which may be sold in the market, disruption of critical information system and infrastructure of a country, and also there may be chances of disruption of elections, especially such elections which are internet based voting. So these can be said to be some of the examples of impact of cyber warfare. So it is in this regard the government of India has come up with National Cyber Security Policy of 2013. So according to this policy, establishes the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, which is the national nodal agency in respect of critical information infrastructure protection. Now, these critical information infrastructure includes infrastructure such as power and energy, infrastructure of telecommunication, infrastructure of banking and financial services, government agencies, and also strategic and public enterprises. Now, very recently, we witnessed a cyber attack originating from China, which led to electricity blackout in Mumbai for few hours. Now, another incident of cyber attack was when European Union formally blamed Russia for its involvement in the ghostwriter cyber campaign, which targeted the elections and political systems of several member states. Further, Chinese state-linked hackers also targeted Afghan telecom provider Roshan and stole gigabytes of data from their corporate mail server over the past years. So these can be said to be some of the examples of cyber attack. And with respect to these attacks, the government of India has also established the Computer Emergency Response Team, that is CERT-IN, which also has been designated to act as a nodal agency for responding to computer security incidents in India. Now, both these agencies, namely National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center and Computer Emergency Response Team, has been provided under Information Technology Act of 2008. So the Information Technology Act 2008 provides for the following functions for CERT-IN with respect to cybersecurity. These functions include collections, analysis, and dissemination of information on cyber incidents, forecast and alerts of cybersecurity incidents, emergency measures for handling cybersecurity incidents, coordination of cyber incident response activities, issuing of guidelines, advisories, vulnerability notes, and also white papers relating to information security practices, procedures, prevention, response, and reporting of cyber incidents, and also such other functions relating to cyber security which may be needed at times. So these are some of the functions of CERT-IN, which has been designated as a nodal agency in order to respond to computer security incidents in India. So the strategy with respect to National Cyber Security Policy of 2013 includes creating a secured ecosystem, creating an assurance framework, encouraging open standards, strengthening the regulatory framework in India, creating mechanism for security threats and early warning, vulnerability management and response to security threats, securing e-governance services, protection and resilience of critical information infrastructure, promotion of research and development in cybersecurity, reducing supply chain risk, improving human resource development in the field of cybersecurity by providing them education and also training programs, improving cybersecurity awareness, developing effective public-private partnership in the area of cybersecurity, developing bilateral and multilateral relationship in the area of cybersecurity with other countries such as information sharing and cooperation agreements, and also prioritize approach for implementation of cybersecurity policies in India. So these are part of the strategy which has been deployed by the National Cyber Security Policy of 2013. So based on this understanding of National Cyber Security Policy of 2013, let's go through the views of the author in this article, especially with respect to the 4 dimensions of national security in cyber warfare, which he suggests which is necessary in the 21st century. Thus, regarding the objectives, the article suggests that there is a need to identify assets so that we can defend such assets, especially critical infrastructure of the country. There is a need to know the identities of such preparators and also preparing for future disruptive events, seeing how the coronavirus has impacted both people and economy of the entire country, and also to prepare for future disruptive events in the backdrop of present disruption caused by coronavirus. Now regarding priorities, considering the uncertainties about the future in 21st century, national security priorities will require new departments for supporting several frontiers of innovation and technologies such as hydrogen fuel cells, desalination of seawater, need for thorium for nuclear technology, need for anti-computer viruses, and new medicines creating better immunity. Thus, this focus on new priorities will require compulsory science and mathematics education, especially in application for analytical subjects. So, in order to excel in research and development in these areas, there is a need to promote education, especially in the areas of STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and maths. Now, regarding strategy, the article suggests that the strategy required for this new national security policy will have to be anticipative of our enemy's approaches in many dimensions, and also there is a need to intercept advances made by enemy countries. So in this regard, the article suggests that for India, it will be the China cyber capability factor, which is the new threat for which India has to devise a new cyber policy strategy. Further, the article highlights that India needs to ensure international cooperation also in cyber warfare technologies in order to tackle future threats emanating from either side of India's border. That is both from northwestern side and also from northeastern side. And lastly, this article talks about resource mobilization, where the article suggests to strengthen the economy of a country as lack of economic resources must be met through macroeconomic measures. So with respect to these 4 dimensions, the article suggests that to counter the innovation taking place in cyber warfare, there is a need for national security policy which takes into account technological innovations and challenges posed by cyber warfare. So on this understanding of need for a new technology, let us also go through some of the challenges with respect to National Cyber Security Policy of 2013. Now this policy was issued in 2013, and so far many new cyber developments, especially with respect to cyber warfare and cyber attacks, have taken place in the past. So in this regard, cyber security emanating from new technology such as cloud computing needs to be addressed, as these are not addressed as per the old policy of 2013. Further, we have seen increasing cyber attacks as we have discussed with respect to power outage in Mumbai, which can be associated with Red Echo and Shadow Pad as cyber attacks which took place in Mumbai. Now let's see this question asked in the year 2018. The question asked by UPSC was the terms WannaCry, Petya and Eternal Blue, sometimes mentioned in the news recently, are related to. Options were exoplanets, cryptocurrency, cyber attacks and mini satellites. Obviously the correct answer here is cyber attack. So the new policy must take into account all these new cyber attacks including Red Echo and Shadow Pad through which critical Indian infrastructure is being targeted. Further, there is a need to regulate the increased use of social networking sites, especially by anti-government agencies or non-state actors, which may impact India's national security. So, increased use of social networking sites against national interest should be regulated. Further, there is a need to strengthen cyber forensic capacity building and also sharing of information by private entities, especially such information which may hamper or has an impact on national security. Next, the 2013 policy does not have an outright scheme or a policy to strengthen digital privacy rights of citizens. So, considering the developments taking place in the internet world, privacy rights of individuals must be protected by the government. Further, there is a need for special provisions, especially in case of cyber attack on critical infrastructure. And in this regard, there is a need for internet lockdown if any of the critical infrastructure of India is impacted through cyber warfare. Now, these critical infrastructure may include power and energy, transmission lines, transmission of electricity, transport, including satellites. So, Government of India must come up with a policy, especially with respect to internet lockdown, in case these critical infrastructures are attacked. Further, there is also need for nationwide cyber security training of all workforce who uses technology. Now, this training must be provided not only to public officials but also to private individuals working in the private sector. Further, with respect to these cyber security trainings, citizens must also be told about certain do's and don'ts, especially in case of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure of India. Further, there is a need for increase in number of cyber security professionals at all levels of critical infrastructure. Now, in the year 2018, Government of India came up with a policy of Cyber Surakshit Bharat initiative. Now, according to this policy, it includes training of public officials and also their capacity building to better understand the aspect of cyber warfare and also cyber attacks. And this initiative was taken especially in the backdrop of Digital India campaign. So, as a part of this initiative, it must also include training. So, training of citizens should also be provided under Cyber Surakshit Bharat initiative. So, overall, the security standards should not only be defined for government organization but also be enforced on private companies with a checklist of requirements in case of cyber attack on critical infrastructure of India. So, question in your mains examination can be asked with respect to importance of National Cyber Security Policy of 2013, certain challenges and issues which this policy does not address, and also how India should tackle the new cyber warfare, especially with respect to increasing use of technology such as artificial intelligence, 5G and even nanotechnology. So, after understanding this article, let's take up the next article for discussion. Now, the next news to be taken up appears on page number 11. It says Pentagon chief urges more Black Sea security ties. And this development is with respect to countering Russian aggression in the region along the Black Sea. So, the United States wants to counter Russian aggression, especially in the Black Sea region. So, let's look up this news from the perspective of world map. Now, as you can see, the countries surrounding Black Sea are Romania, Ukraine, Russia, including the Crimea region, Georgia, Turkey and Bulgaria. So this news says that Mr. Austin was in Bucharest on the third stop of a tour of the region to build confidence among allies, including Georgia and Ukraine, both of which are hoping to join NATO and also to promote greater cooperation among military forces. So based on this, we will see more news with respect to this region surrounding the Black Sea. So from your examination perspective, especially prelims, you need to know the countries surrounding Black Sea, which includes Russia, Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania and Ukraine, including the areas of Crimea. And adjacent to Black Sea, is the Sea of Azov. So this news can be seen primarily from your prelims perspective, especially with respect to world map. Now this particular news appearing on page number 9, although it has not been taken in the DNH, but here let us understand about this term furlough. Now this is important because we have seen that UPSC in the 2021 prelims examination in the section of polity asked about parole and also difference between police custody and judicial custody. So the Supreme Court has discussed the differences between furlough and parole and the principles relating to the grant of either furlough or parole. So Supreme Court held that furlough and parole envisage a short-term temporary release from the custody, while parole is granted for the prisoner to meet a specific exigency. Furlough, on the other hand, may be granted after a stipulated number of years, 2, 3 or 4, have been served without a reason. Now this aspect becomes important with respect to furlough, that a minimum number of years have been spent in jail without a particular reason. It further says that grant of furlough is to break the monotony of imprisonment and to enable the convict to maintain continuity with his family and also integration with the society. So these two aspects are also taken care of while providing furlough, that is to ensure continuity of the convict with his family life and to ensure integration with the society. Then the Supreme Court says that although furlough can be claimed without a reason, the prisoner does not have an absolute legal right with respect to claiming furlough. So any convict cannot claim in the court that they have an absolute legal right under the Constitution or any other right to claim furlough. Further, the grant of furlough must be balanced against the public interest and can be refused to certain categories of prisoners. So these can be said to be some of the important highlights with respect to difference between parole and furlough. Now regarding parole, we have already discussed that parole are regulated through state laws. So in this particular topic, you need to know the difference between furlough and parole as has been suggested by the Supreme Court of India. And again, questions can be asked in the upcoming prelims examination in the year 2022 with respect to furlough or even parole. So after understanding these two topics, let's take up the question for the day. Based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. So the question is, the term shadow pad, red eco and ghost writer sometimes mentioned in the news are related to. Options are A. Cryptocurrency, B. Cyber attacks, C. Developing medicines, and D. Net zero. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, tricyclazole and buprofezin, which are a cause of concern, are used as. The correct answer is pesticides in agriculture, as this topic was discussed extensively yesterday by Mangal sir. So in order to go through this topic again, you can go through the DNS of 20th October 2021 as discussed by Mangal sir. With this, we come to an end to today's analysis. Thank you for watching DNS.